Before we begin, we want to remind you in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a microphone, and you can mute or unmute yourself. If you do have a question, as you heard Father George mention, you can kindly send it to us in chat. We will be monitoring that. Or later, if we identify yourself, if we ask you to identify yourself, you can unmute yourself before you speak. So without further ado, we'll begin our program with our Finance Committee Co-Chair, Steve Salas, who will begin our webinar.
We want to tell everybody that we are recording this. So we are doing this as a recording, and we will be putting this presentation on the Metropolis website. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our allocation process. The allocation process is how we fund the Archdiocese. Why do we have the allocation process? It's to provide a stable revenue for the Archdiocese to partially fund its ministries while ensuring fair and equitable assessment across the country. Okay, what does that mean? The Archdiocese has no way of raising funds other than the parishes providing money to the Archdiocese and through donations. They don't have fundraisers, they don't have ways of having festivals as parishes do. So the majority of the money coming to the Archdiocese comes from the parishes. We support the ministries of the Archdiocese through our giving. 25% of all monies that are provided to the Archdiocese is returned to the metropolises for some of the expenses of each metropolis. What are those expenses for the metropolis? Each metropolis is to provide 5 employees: the chancellor, or the metropolitan, the chancellor, the registrar, the youth director, and a secretary. So that 25% comes back to us for a minimum of $440,000. The other 75% is used to offset some of the operating expenses of the Archdiocese, and mostly the ministries of the Archdiocese. As you'll see, the Ecumenical Patriarchate, Holy Cross School of Theology, the Orthodox Observer, Internet Ministries is a very big item in the budget of the Archdiocese. Other ministries include religious education, youth programs, and such. The Archdiocese Finance Committee every 2 years meet and formalize the budget. The Finance Committee has changed over the years and now has included finance chairman of each metropolis to be a part of it. So we do have a say-so in formulating the budget for the Archdiocese. And that's very important for our metropolis and every metropolis to have a say-so, more than just going to the biannual Clergy Lady Congress and getting up in front of everybody and just asking questions. We do have a say-so, we do have a voice at these budget meetings. But when they formulate the budget, they look at it and try to get a number, and in most cases it's 75 to 80% of the budget. Now we're going to use as an example, what is the methodology of the allocation system? We're allocating, the first part of the allocation system is taking that budget number for the national ministries and trying to divide it up to the 9 metropolises and the Archdiocese district proportionately to the net expenditures. We'll get into what net expenditures is in just a minute. Let's use an example. what we're trying to do here. Let's say that our total allocation or our total budget number is $20 million. This is what the Archdiocese is expecting from the allocation system, from all metropolises in the Archdiocese direct district. The total Archdiocese net expenditures from all parishes, what their net expenditures added up into one number is $85 million. Metropolis A has a net expenditure of 15 million. So we try to get a percentage, and as the example shows, 15 million of 85 million is 17.6%. So Metropolis A's proportionate share is 3.52 million, or 17.6% of 20 million. We do the same thing for all the metropolises to get their proportionate share of the $20 million budget. Now, similarly, we do the same thing for our parishes. Each parish we provide their proportionate share based on their net expenditures. If Metropolis A's budget is 3.5 million, as the example before, for the Archdiocese, we have to share that among all the parishes within the metropolis. So Parish XYZ's expenditures is $200,000, and the total net expenditures for the Metropolis A is 15 million. So that's 200,000 of 15 million is 1.33%. So Parish XYZ's allocation is 1.33% of the 3.52 million. In this case, 46.8 million, or 1,000, excuse me. So what are net expenditures? Expenditures are calculated by subtracting certain parish expenditures, excluded expenditures, from the parish total general fund and building fund expenditures. What we're looking for is what it takes to run the parish. Basic information. So net expenditures equals the general fund expenditures plus any building fund expenditures minus excluded expenditures. We'll be talking about that more and more. Some of the examples here of excluded expenditures: capital improvements, mortgage principal and interest, hazard insurance premiums, parochial day school and Greek school expenses, charities, donations, festival and other fundraising expenses, and clergy lady conferences. We'll get into the details of that in a few minutes. And we'll be talking about how to fill out the form. So the process has a calendar. You know, we have certain dates, certain deadlines that we have to meet. On March 15th, we sent out the request to the parishes to start completing the forms. We need those forms completed and all supporting documents by May 15th. During that time, from May 15th to the next date, July 1st, the Metropolis Finance Committee reviews every single number that's provided on all the forms and audits them, and then we have to provide this information to the Archdiocese. We do that by July 1st. During the month of July, there is a National Ministries Allocation Committee that meets, and they formulate the allocation to each and every metropolis. Then by September 1st, each metropolis sets the allocation for each parish. September 30th, Metropolis sets the assessments. Then once you get your assessment, appeals can be submitted if you feel that something is unjust or you've been raised a significant amount. We can look at any situation and consider any appeals. Then by March 31st, appeals will be reviewed and notifications will be made to the parishes. So now we want to go into how to complete the data form. And now I'd like to turn it over to Phil to review the data form, and we'll discuss how to complete it and what we need from each and every parish.
Thanks,
Phil.
Steve. Thanks. Before we move on, let's just ask, are there any questions about the overall process that Steve just talked about? If we have questions, feel free to type them in, put them in our chat room. We have Father George Livanos, our host this evening, monitoring the chat box. I'm sure you all can see it as well, and he'll be glad to direct those questions. And please feel free to ask them as we're moving along here. I think we're going to go through the meat and potatoes now of the form. This is probably the most important part. And we as members of the Finance Committee are available. We have members in both the Central and all four regions, the Central, the East, the Northwest, as well as South, to assist parishes in completing the form. Unfortunately, too, we're also the ones that have to call the parishes when May 15th rolls around on the process and gently remind you so that we can avoid any type of penalties for the parish as well. So, keep that in mind that we are available for you. On the website, the Metropolis Finance Committee is available with the representatives from each region. So let's take a look at the data form. You see it on your screen in front of you. And since you see it on the screen in front of you, let's talk about some general comments about the form. You've all seen the form. It's been sent out to you by now. If you haven't received it, you want to talk to the key financial secretary of your parish last year, because these were all mailed out, as you saw from the previous slide. What was the date that we mailed them out? March 1st or so?
March 15th. They were emailed, and they should have been mailed out also.
So if you haven't received them, I guarantee you your clergy have received them, and your parish president has received them. If you haven't, as the so-called responsible person for completing them in your parish, do see your parish president or the clergy in your parish. And of course, if the clergy says they didn't get them, please reach out to us by letting us know through an email through Steve or Father George Callis at the Metropolis, and we'll gladly get that out to you right away.
Now, it is a complete package that has the assessment process. It has the definitions of the deductions, and also
I want to put that there close so that you could see the whole package.
The whole process, and the form is at the last 2 pages.
And this is what the form looks like, is what you see on the screen in front of you. Some general comments. Look, there's no exceptions. All parishes in the Archdiocese complete the form. There's no exceptions. Even with the blessings of the Ecumenical Patriarch, all parishes in the Archdiocese complete the form. In order to be deductible, and we'll talk about deductible expenses, an expense must be included in the general expenses of the parish. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into detailed deductible expenditures. For example, if you do show a fundraiser as a net in your income, just the net proceeds from the fundraiser, you're not going to deduct the expenses because you've already done that. Forms must be accompanied by proper financial statements, balance sheet, income statements for each year. That is a must. They need to be done so that we have some background information.
And let me reiterate, it is for each year. We have to have both years submitted with the form.
So, and the reason for that is because there's screening processes. Once Steve or your regional representative gets your form and does a simple review, before we go to the next step, we're reviewing this to make sure numbers jive with your current statements, because After all, each metropolis is reviewed by another metropolis when they meet for their general finance committee meetings later in the year. So we're doing a review with you so that when another metropolis asks us, well, tell us about this deductible expense, we're able to show that background. And that gets us to the next general comment. Figures on financial documents must correspond to the numbers on the allocation form. If they're not self-evident, folks, we should have an explanation or an additional schedule so that we can find that number and find how you came up with that number.
A good example is if you've made donations to several charities, make a list of all those charities and where we can find them on the financial statement.
And then finally, man, we say this for a reason. I've got examples of some of our allocations forms from last year. Please print clearly so that it can be read. Many of you will fill it out using the old-fashioned pen or pencil, and we find it very, very difficult to realize the difference between a 6 and a 9 or a 2 and a 3. It would be best that you type it, fill it out on a PDF form, but legibility has been very, very difficult to read in the past few years. So let's talk about the actual completion of the allocation form. All the allocation forms at the beginning look like this. Due date, of course, on this is wrong. It should be May 15th, 2016. We're using last year's form. The name of parish, telephone, address, city, person preparing this form, and a telephone number, an email, the council treasurer, telephone and email, council president, telephone and email. Why do we put those there? When we're doing our first review, we want to have a contact so that we don't have to call the priest and say, Father, give me the name of the person that prepared the form, or your treasurer, or your president, so that we can discuss this. We want to come straight to you and be able to discuss it and correct it before it goes any further in the process.
Now, one of the things also that we have on here is a parish number. Parish numbers are very important. When we fill out spreadsheets and forms, parish number helps us rather than looking up names. It's easier to type. And if you don't know your parish number, we can send that to you.
Yeah, and you probably see it on your allocation form when the allocation for each parish is released during the year. You're up there, so we want to click on the form. Oh, I got it. So
the parish number is also on the monthly archdiocese invoice.
Say that again.
The parish number is also found on the monthly archdiocese invoice.
Absolutely, John, that's correct. Thank you. That is so true that when you get that invoice, the number is right there. And again, if you're not sure or have any questions about it, by all means, reach out to us and we'll get it for you. So let's talk about the actual form. You'll see on line A there, total parish income, all funds from sources, total parish income. It's exactly that, total parish income. When you present an income loss statement at your General Assembly, your parish income includes things like your stewardship, your candle income, all your parish fundraising events, the trays that you pass, holiday offerings, the special trays for the epitafial fund, the restricted and unrestricted funds, all parish income, not half of the parish income, all parish income. Show it there on line A for both years. For this, in this case, it'll be 14 and 15. It's all income. That includes rental income that you might have in your parishes for your hall. That includes interest income that you might have in your CDs. It includes income from the parish endowment that you might have, or the parish trust, or the foundation that you might have set up in your parish. All income to operate your parish should be shown on the allocation form. Remember, this is based on expenses, not on income. So show us your income.
And this to include, if you have Greek schools that charge for their Greek school, the monies that come in for that, that's revenue. coming in, so show that as the income. And typically it is part of your income statement.
What other income should you show? Any other income that I haven't mentioned or Steve has mentioned?
I think we covered most of it.
We tried to. All right, so that's line A. Line A is total parish income. I think that's pretty simple, and it's probably going to be your income total, just as we see it on the income reports that you present to your General Assembly. Line B, total parish expenditures for all purposes. It doesn't say deductible parish expenditures. It's pretty simple. All expenditures, your budget for the year, your income, your expense, your profit loss statement. It's already been done for the year 2015. You've already presented it to your General Assembly in the prior year. You already know what you spent for the year by this time. Have that in there. And then we'll get into these detailed deductible expenses in a second. And so here's the key. You're going to enter a number on line A and B. We would hope when you show us your profit loss statement that the final number on your total parish income is shown on line A. And the final income, or the final number under your expense side for total parish, will match line B, total parish expenditures. It's that simple, folks. And you know, we're trying. I know it sounds like bubble gum here, and it sounds like simple A, B, and C. We say that for a reason, because so many times we receive the allocation form, and we receive your income loss statement, and the numbers just aren't jiving, and the hair turns whiter because we're trying to figure out where these numbers are coming from.
There are examples
Or you
where
lose your hair. Like this guy
yeah,
does.
sorry about the glare. There are examples where parish income and expenses aren't exactly the same of what's on the financial statements. And we have to have that explanation as to why.
Mhm.
Again, an example. We allow a deduction for principal and interest on a mortgage. Now, principal typically is not an expense on typical profit and loss statements. So you add the principal back in there because we should be on a cash basis. That's all we're considering when we're doing this allocation system. We're on a cash basis. So it's still cash out. It is a deductible expense. So it has to be included in your expenditures. That's when the expenditures from your financial statement may not equal the expenditures on the form.
Please send us your questions as we're going along so that we can answer them as we move along here. Father George is so graciously monitoring that chat box, and we ask you to send them in. Let's start talking about C. This is the biggie. This is where things hit the road. The pavement hits the road with detailed deductible expenses, the allowable deductible expenditures, like the Schedule A on the Form 1040 that you all got to look at for the last time yesterday. Yes, yesterday was a good day. But anyway, the allowable deductions. Thank God that the code here isn't as big as the IRS code that takes just books and books and books. It's pretty simple. We're going to go through some of the examples of what detailed deductible expenditures. We don't have any court cases yet to verify them, but we certainly have the experience of at least the last 8 years to go back and look at some expenses that have been allowed and not allowed based on a precedence in each metropolis and throughout the archdiocese.
And we've seen trends too, how parishes have lived throughout these 8 years. So we know what's going on and whether it's a good deduction or not a good deduction.
You know, and before we start talking about allowable deductions, Steve, you know, I think it's important to mention at this point that we as a finance committee encourage that you find as many allowable deductions as possible within the limitations that we're going to explain here. And why is that important?
It's very important because the higher number of deductions that we have, it's the lowering the net expenditures for the metropolis. Therefore, we have a smaller piece of that total budget number to the archdiocese.
Yeah.
So we're looking for as many deductions as possible, but they have to be verifiable and legitimate deductions.
And on your income and expenditure statement. So profit loss statement, as they call it. So let's talk about number one. It's the simplest one, detailed deductible expenses. The number one are funds paid to the archdiocese for the Parish National Ministries commitment. My goodness, you know what that is. You don't need QuickBooks to figure it out. I mean, it's every payment that you sent to the archdiocese for your National Ministries commitment. Now, having said that, it should be the actual amount paid for the calendar year. So in January 2016, this past January, you might have sent in an all-encompassing balance to complete your figure. That doesn't count for 15. That counts for 16. So make sure it's the actual amount paid for the calendar year when looking at the Parish National Ministries commitment. And we do encourage you, and we hope we're not making late payments in January, because that hurts us at the end too, because there's a little bit of cushion that the metropolis gets when everybody pays timely. So make sure the amount paid for the calendar year matches what you put on line 1 for each year for 14 and 15. Do not include money paid to the archdiocese for other items, only the Parish National Ministries commitment. Want to add anything to that?
Well, again, that's what some parishes have tried to add what they paid for the pension program.
Yeah.
And that's not included. This is just National Ministries.
What the figure you were given in the summer or in August, that's the number that you'll carry out, hopefully, and it matches, but it's what you actually paid. If you didn't make it or you paid a little more, great. Put the figure that you paid in the calendar year. Okay, line 2, put a check mark on line 2, and it says funds donated to the archdiocese or its national ministries. This is what you've done above and beyond your allocation. Today, we hear in the Orthodox Observer every day, donate to the St. Nicholas Shrine being built in New York. And many of our parishes have really, really come to bat to support the archdiocese in helping St. Nicholas get built off the ground. That's an example of another fund donated to the archdiocese that should be included on line 2. Any funds that your parish is giving to support Holy Cross, St. Basil's, St. Michael's, that number should be on line 2. But as Steve said earlier, we need a schedule. Please attach a list and the amount donated so that it drives, line 2 drives, and you could put schedule for line 2, detailed deductible expenditure, correct. Funds donated to archdiocese. It's that simple. Please, do not send your entire QuickBook ledger, which could be this thick for some parishes. We got that last year. It's very, very difficult. It's going to take us hours. Just send a simple schedule, take it out of your schedule, and support line 2. The next one, line 3. Line 3, funds donated to SCOBA authorized ministries. SCOBA. SCOBA stands for, I don't know what the acronym stands for. This is getting worse than the IRS now.
Standing Committee of
Orthodox Bishops of America. That's it. It's now Orthodox Christian Bishops or something like that. Anyway, hey, it's any authorized ministry sponsored by all the Orthodox jurisdictions in America. And that includes the big ones. This past Sunday, IOCC had a big Syrian relief dinner at St. Nicholas Cathedral in Pittsburgh for Syrian relief, 600 people. Many, many parishes supported tables there. That's funds donated to SCOBA authorized ministries. IOCC, Orthodox Christian Mission Center, OCMC, Orthodox Christian Fellowship. If you're sponsoring OCF, in Pittsburgh, we do that. We do that in Columbus. We do that in many parishes where there's colleges and universities. Simply attach a list and the amounts donated to all the authorized ministries of the Orthodox Bishops of America. That's line 3, funds donated to SCOBA authorized ministries. Again, above and beyond your allocation. Finally, number 4 talks about funds donated to the metropolis. As you know, our metropolis recently instituted the new Metropolis 12+1 program. Give the metropolis your 12 months and they asked you as a stewardship gesture to fund our local metropolis by giving an extra month of your allocation to the metropolis. So the money paid to the metropolis on that 12+1 program, or any additional donations your parish is making to the metropolis, this is where it would be put on line 4 of the allocations data form. The next line, line 5. And again, if we're going too fast, folks, slow us down in the chat box, please. Father George is monitoring it, and I think he's getting a question for us right now. Is it on line 4, Father? Can we move
Yes.
on?
What about Saint Photios donation?
St. Photios Shrine. Hey, this guy's going to be very, very happy.
For the metropolis.
Oh, the St. Photios stewardship donation. If your parish is giving to the St. Photios as a parish, absolutely. That would be funds donated to the metropolis.
That's absolutely true. It's not just
dinner. Not the dinner.
Not the dinner.
No, because you're receiving something, but as a donation,
As a steward.
Well,
exactly.
let me add something to that. Let's say your parish is buying an ad for that's funds donated to the metropolis. If you're going to the dinner and you're being a sponsor for the metropolis dinner above and beyond
That is
buying a
separate
dinner.
than buying a table.
Yeah, that would be something that you would definitely be an extra fund paid to the metropolis 12+1 program. So, or paid to the metropolis. So anything paid to the metropolis above and beyond, getting something in receipt for it, just like a tax deduction on your individual tax return.
Next question. We have a non-church foundation that pays for 25% of our facility manager / youth advisor salary. The church pays 100% of the salary and is reimbursed by the foundation on a quarterly basis. Can we deduct the 25% of the salary paid by the non-church foundation from the total expenses?
I would say yes, you can deduct that total amount because you're receiving income from the foundation.
However,
the
big however, that income should show on your income statement.
That's correct.
So that income is coming in just like you would get interest in a bank account. You're going to show that interest income on your income statement. You need to show the income coming from your foundation, trust fund. It needs to come up on your income statement. Please show it on your income statement, so then it could be an allowable expenditure on the expense side.
So yes, so those are one of those examples where you can build up the expenses even more as a deduction, and that's what we're looking for.
We encourage that.
Absolutely.
That's fine. Again, if those funds are being used to pay for metropolis, archdiocese funds, whatever it might be. All right, good question. Thank you. Whoever brought that in, we appreciate that. Let's go to line 5, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the question and answer period after we're done with the form. Let's look at the specifics. Number 5 on the form that Steve just checked there are funds donated to the ecumenical patriarch. If your parish is donating to the ecumenical patriarch, there was a patriarchate, or the patriarch. The patriarchate is the whole body there in Turkey. Any of the patriarchal institutions, the monasteries of the patriarchate, the archons, the Order of St. Andrew does a drive in your parish, and you donate it to the order on behalf of the ecumenical patriarchate. Those are included on line 5. Again, a simple schedule, if we can't find it on your expenditure list, would help us find it a lot quicker. Include it on line 5. Okay, this is a biggie. Guys, this is a biggie. Line 6. Funds paid for facility construction. Now, obviously, when we get into line 6, this makes it pretty simple because it says attach a list of projects, including date started, anticipated completion, estimated total cost, and date approved by the metropolis. Before you do any major fund facility construction in a parish,
major expenditures need to be approved by the metropolis. Major expenditures.
If you all decided to reconstruct and do brand new iconography in the parish, do the interior decor, obviously it's a project that we encourage, and it would be a deduction on line 6. However, that project needs to be blessed off by the metropolis. So things that fall on line 6 would be things such as your iconography, your purchase of new land, capital improvements of the parish. Again, I do want to emphasize, we want to emphasize that for funds paid for facility construction, you must include a list of the projects, including the start date, the estimated completion, as it says on the form, the cost, and the date that our metropolis approved it, that His Eminence or Father George sent you the letter stating that it was approved. Finally, attach a list and where it ties into financial statement. Obviously, if you have expenditures, it's going to be on your profit loss statement.
Now, you may have a line item that says iconography expenses, then you may have maintenance and repair. Some of that maintenance and repair may be capital improvements,
Well,
and it shouldn't be.
yeah, maintenance.
But
Let's talk a
it
little
has
bit.
happened.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, if we're simply maintaining something or repairing something, putting a patch over it to fix it, that's not a capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is really bringing in new iconography, redoing the iconography, redoing the altar, redoing the iconostasis, whatever it might be. That's a capital improvement, as opposed to, again, just like you would do it in normal tax law. A capital expenditure is different than maintenance and repair.
Absolutely.
Maintenance and repair is not something that you're going to put.
That's an
online.
annual thing, that it's an ongoing thing, maintenance and repair.
Everybody has it. It's not deductible. All right, let's go on to the next one. Excuse me here. Line 7, funds paid for interest on construction loan or loan. So if you have a capital expenditure, if you have a new project that's gotten blessed off, many of our parishes will get a home or get a
They get the money ahead of time.
yeah, the loan. Get loans. The interest on those construction loans or on those loans for the capital improvement that are blessed off by the bank. Obviously, those interest funds are deductible as a deductible expenditure on line 7. Not the interest that you're paying on your line of credit for ordinary repairs or ordinary just to get the cash flow going in the parish. That is not interest that is deductible on this form. We understand the difference here?
There is a difference there. Some people borrow money just because they have a situation where money is going to be coming in.
Yeah,
and after Pascha or after the festival.
Yeah, we've all experienced it where our parishes are struggling with cash flow. So we got to go and do a line of credit temporarily to get enough income just to pay the bills. That interest that you're paying on that type of cash flow loan or cash flow loan, whatever you call it, short-term
loans.
That's not the type of interest. Only the capital expenditure or the new construction loan, something as such. Okay, let's look at line 8. Same thing. Funds paid on a mortgage, principal and interest. Almost every parish has it, but all funds, as long as it's showing on your expenditure statement, all the funds paid on mortgage, including all principal and interest, is deductible as an allowable deduction on line 8. Again, it needs to be included in your expense report for it to be deductible. If your foundation is paying for it and it's not going through your church's expense form, it will not be deductible. So you need to run it through your expense. If we can't stress anything more tonight, in order to have something allowable as an allowable deduction, it must go through your income expense form for the year. 9. This is big. Funds paid to hold any fundraiser. And this is where Steve and I come out to the parish and say, come on, guys, I don't see anything from your fundraisers that you've had. This is a great place to have allowable deductions. We all have the Greek festivals. We all do dinner dances. We all do community dinners. We all do golf outings. Become a success in our parish. A golf outing is a great way to raise money for your parish. This is paid to hold a fundraiser to bring money in. So all the direct expenses for that fundraiser, all the expenses that you pay to rent the golf club, to the country club,
the food for your food festival, the dancers that you may pay, the musicians that you'll pay, the tents that you rent. Those are all direct expenses.
I'm hearing the ding, ding, dings now going through your heads as you're thinking about these expenses. But again, if your food festival does not come up on your expenditure list and you're only netting thing on the income, can we take any of these expenses?
Absolutely not.
Because we did not see them on the expense side.
Correct.
So if you're only showing net profit for income, you already done the deduction. So by all means, show the entire amount that you bring in on the income side, show the entire amount that you paid out on the expense side, and then do a schedule and show how much you paid and make it a deduction. Okay? Number 10. This is big as well, and it's seldom done correctly, and I'll explain in just a second. Funds paid to operate a day school or Greek education school. Most of our 50 parishes in the metropolis of Pittsburgh have a Greek school. Most of us are doing a program that either uses the Papaloisis curriculum or uses the Archdiocese curriculum. The funds paid to operate that school, teacher salaries.
Not the pre-salary.
No, of course not. Teacher salaries for your Greek school, payroll taxes, the insurance, the equipment for Greek school, your computers, your supplies, your books. All those things are deductible as they are funds to operate a day school or Greek education school. Now, when you go to Chicago or New York, they have their day schools. I know there are some of our parishes, such as Columbus and Holy Cross, they have their day schools. They had their day school at Holy Cross for a while. Those would be deductible if you have a day school. But most importantly, your Greek schools, again, in order to make it a deductible expense, it has to run and pay through your parish general fund. Some of our parishes have separate Greek school accounts, and they run everything through that Greek school account. They pay the teachers through that Greek school account, and they just call it the Greek school account. Well, guess what? If it's not showing up on your parish expense form, and I know at least 3 parishes here in the Pittsburgh area where they run it that way, if it's not showing up on your expense form, we're not going to see anything on line 10.
And we need a schedule also. In some cases, parishes will lump the teacher salaries all in one line item, or all salaries in one line item, and all the supplies and office supplies for Greek school in another line item. So,
and most of our parishes, you know, with the use of QuickBooks or any type of accounting software, you have that out. So it's pretty easy to go to your ledgers, pull out those numbers, show its schedule. You know, we see the difference between salaries, payroll taxes. We add them all up at the end of the day, and that schedule will show the total amount paid for the Greek school. But don't show the pre-salary there. Don't show the pastoral assistant salary. You know, there's certain things that do not allocate towards Greek school, or the day school. Make sure that you're putting the right thing. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and throw in, you're not going to allocate your community center the amount of time that Greek school is held in the community center, for example. That is not a direct expense of having that Greek education school. You have that community center no matter what. Please keep that in mind. We're going to get into that a little bit more on our question and answer period, but you're not going to allocate funds for your community center in something like line 10 or something like 9.9, okay? So you use your community center, your food festival. You're not going to allocate the time that you use your community center. Number 11, sometimes we get some white hair because 10 and 11 is lumped together, and we do want that for statistical purposes for the Archdiocese. We need that broken down. 11 is funds paid for religious education. I know many Greek school programs have religious education in them.
That is true.
But funds paid for religious education, basically Sunday school, any supplemental Bible study, catechetical classes, lecture series that you might have. Many of our parishes are doing seminars. These are all religious education. If you're bringing in a world-renowned bishop to come and speak in your parish, that is definitely a catechism class. That is some type of seminar. That is religious education. Now,
this is not just,
mean,
I'm sorry, but this is not just Sunday school or that type of school, but it's for encompassing all religious education.
So one of the fallacies that we see here, and we saw it last year on several parishes, well, the teacher for religious education in our parish is the parish priest, so we're going to put his salary there for religious education. What
Well,
do you
he
think,
does
Steve?
teach
But
religion, does he
it's
not?
not a direct expense.
That's correct.
You know, another thing that we do is we put our Goya and our youth expenses there as well. That's separate. Youth expenses are not, in fact, the expenses that we pay for our youth to go to a basketball tournament are not necessarily religious education. So again, lecture series, seminars, equipment, supplies, books for your volunteer Sunday school, teacher salaries, if you have salaries for your religious education, payroll taxes, insurance, etc., for religious education only. Okay? I'm surprised we haven't seen any questions on that yet. I look forward to seeing some. Let's go to line 12. And this is something that creates some confusion every year. We see insurance.
Every year.
So we have our insurance policy for the parish. Let's just go ahead and put all the premiums that we're paying for insurance and put them on line 12. No, folks. Most of our parishes in the metropolis of Pittsburgh probably will not have anything on line 12 unless they live in a flood zone, unless they have insurance for hurricanes like they do in Florida in the South and California. They have earthquake insurance. The catastrophic risk insurance is a separate rider generally on your insurance policy. It specifically covers hurricanes, earthquakes, flood zones. Some have a separate catastrophic for mine subsidence. Not common because that's almost a common one, but if it's a catastrophic risk, an act by God, all right, those are the only insurance things, and you must show the policy rider that shows the amount that you're putting on line 12. Okay, is that clear? Any questions on that? You can go ahead and unmute yourself on that if you'd like. Okay, hearing none right now, let's go to line 13. I think line 13 is pretty simple to understand. It's going to be a rare occurrence for a parish, unless you're like maybe one or two of our parishes where we're getting new priests every year. Oh man, it's just a joke. But anyway, line 13, funds paid for moving expense for the clergy. You're paying for your clergy's moving expenses to bring a new priest to the parish, not to take Father George's items from his home and put in the storage shed. That's not a moving expense, even though Presbytera Diante will probably put him in the outhouse. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about specifically bringing a new priest to the parish. By the time this webinar is over, that might be the case.
That may be true.
We love you, Father George, and thank you for hosting us this evening. So that's pretty clear. Anytime you're bringing a new priest to the parish, the moving expenses to bring that priest and family to your parish are an allowable deduction on line 13.
Pretty straightforward.
Straightforward, but do include a schedule. It's going to be on your expenditures part on your profit loss. We ask that you include a schedule as well. Finally, 14. Very, very similar to what we saw, Bob, with the SCOBA ministries. Line 14, funds paid to outreach programs of the parish. Let's talk about some examples. This could be charitable contributions to another 501c. Let's say here at Holy Cross, Canonsburg, many of our parishes here in Pittsburgh donate to the South Hills Food Ministries. It's a 501c, and they give donations. The parish, or the priests, what do you call your syndesmos? The local syndesmos here in Pittsburgh, they support these ministries, their food pantries in the area. That's outreach to the community. If you're doing evangelism in the community and you're teaching, Orthodox religious education to your community, you're doing outreach programs of the parish, you attach a list, the amount donated, and include it on line 14. Questions, comments on outreach program of the parish? Father George?
In general, if we discover that one of the entries of the prior year was incorrect when completing the form this year, can we change the prior year entry, or do we have to show the same amount that was reported in the prior year?
Good question. Very good question.
The answer to that is your last year's done.
Yeah.
We have to.
Why are we asking for it though?
Well, let's say we're using 2014's number and 2015 numbers for this year. Last year we used 13 and 14. So if 2014 has changed, we still have to be able to substantiate the information based on the financials that you've provided us. That's all we can go by at this point.
But I mean, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and correct it. Like, let's say through the review process, we've made a correction and we disallowed some of the allowable expense deductions. Then by all means, we've seen a correction. Usually we're going to communicate that correction back to the parish. At that time, we'd ask you to go ahead and put the corrected amount
Correct.
so that we could
Sure.
substantiate what we've done finally at the end of the day. So it's a very great question that we want to see that, but at the same time, it doesn't mean it's going to change for the prior year because, like Steve said, we're done. We do want to see the correction zone. We want to make sure we're putting you on the right path so that you're most specifically doing the right thing for 2015.
Yes.
So that leads us as a great segue onto line 15. Line 15, funds paid in connection with the National Clergy Lady Congress. Folks, forgive me for being Mickey Mouse here. I want to say it one more time. National Clergy Lady Congress. It's also known as the National Biennial Clergy Lady Congress.
Does that mean every 2 years?
That means it happens every 2 years. Does anybody know when the next one's going to occur, Father George?
The clergy lady is
The Biennial National Clergy Lady?
yes, July 3rd through
10th, 6th, 7th, 8th.
through 7th.
First week of July, we're going to have our National Clergy Lady Congress in the year 2016 in Nashville, Tennessee. So, does that mean on line 15, we're going to see any number for the year 2015 for the National Clergy Lady Congress?
There shouldn't be any number.
Absolutely not. But I
Zero.
guarantee you, we will see a lot of your allocation forms come to us because the treasurer will go ahead and do a QuickBooks fund and see on your budget where you have clergy lady. And when you see clergy lady, you're not thinking national. You take the local clergy lady that happens in Pittsburgh or Cleveland, wherever the metropolis clergy lady, that is not included on line 15. So we need a national clergy lady that takes place every 2 years.
So we'll
Nothing.
have, for the 2 years on the form, we'll have 2014 and 2015. 2014 will show National Clergy Lady Congress
But you would
dollars
pay
expense.
to go to Philadelphia.
That's correct. But nothing for 2015. Do not include metropolis clergy lady expenses.
Right. I hope that's as clear as mud. I want to make it as clear as the sunshine that we had today here in Pittsburgh.
Now,
Only the clergy lady that occurs for the archdiocese level every other year.
and that includes all expenses, your registration, your lodging, your travel, your
Everything.
meals, all the expenses that's paid by the parish.
You might pay a delegate, your at-large delegate that you elect. Some parishes, the delegate will offer to pay it as a part of his or her stewardship, and some parishes, the parish pays for it. But that expense would also be included. That could get quite costly to go to a national clergy lady.
Yes,
We
it
know,
can.
very costly.
Yes.
So that's a substantial deduction on line 15. Finally, we get to the last one, line 16. Oh my. As finance committee members, I could say that we have many treasurers and parish presidents that have become very creative with line 16 where it says other, miscellaneous. So we want to point out that other does not allow you to do a catch-all. Other has to be any special item, miscellaneous special item, and you see the double asterisk on the form. That double asterisk takes you to the bottom of the form and it says special items approved by the hierarch. If it's not approved by the hierarch, and usually the things that would be allowed in this case are already included on the form on line 6 for special facility construction. But if for some reason the hierarch says, you know, we're going to allow you to take a deduction because we know your parish can't pay for the pension of your priest, we're going to allow you to take a deduction that will be a special item approved by the hierarch. It's not something that we would see. It's very uncommon that we would see any entry in line 16, right, Steve?
And we have to see it in writing,
Yeah.
just so we know for a fact that there is an allowance by the hierarch.
So the time is 8:27. We've been at it almost an hour, Steve. Let's get into the next slide. And we'll see on the next slide that after you have your total deductions on line C, that's the sum of deductions lines 1 through 16. Then you have your total net parish expenditures. That's taken line B minus line C. That's taken all your expenditures minus your deductible expenditures. And we come up with the amount that will allow us to submit to the Archdiocese for the other metropolis to review us and then finally give us our allocation. And we want to see a lot of allowable deductions, but they have to be within the realms of what we discussed tonight. Finally, the next slide will show us that there's some very, very important things to complete the allocation data form. And that means that it needs to be certified. So the next slide shows that we certify the information, and the certifications are going to occur by the parish priest, even though he may not have a clue. Many parishes he does, but in many parishes, the parish priest does not have a clue with what's going on here. He still needs to sign off on it. The parish council president, the parish council treasurer, we will consider the form incomplete if all these signatures are not included, including the chairperson of the parish audit committee, because they have the most intimate knowledge of what's on that profit loss statement.
Should have been completed by that time.
Absolutely. Year-end complete financial statements must accompany the form. We said that. If not, it's not a complete form. And on May 15th, it's considered late if forms are missing. Includes a full balance sheet, a full profit and loss statement for all operations of the parish. Again, the double asterisk that you see in the next bullet, if you can highlight that, Steve, it says for special items approved by the hierarchy. That was the last line. Detail must accompany this form. Deductions of priest remuneration is not allowed. That remuneration will occur in every parish. It should not be an allowable expense. And again, total amount paid for parish property and liability insurance, we're asking you to put that in there, and that's simply an audit number so that we can make sure that your catastrophic isn't being miscategorized.
Well, plus that's an informational issue with National Finance Committee. They're needing to know what that insurance cost is. That's all that is really informational.
So Steve and I are going to sit here and discuss some common errors, but before I get into common errors, I want to talk about getting the forms in on time. And we talked about the schedule earlier. May 15th is the big day. And in the past, we've kind of blinked and not gotten firm, and we've kind of been scolded by other metropolises because we're allowing forms to come in several weeks late. And discussing things at the Metropolis Council meetings, we've decided this year to institute the common 5% penalty, and we're going to get into that.
We have to do that.
We have to.
We're volunteers in doing this. May 15th is a deadline to give us the opportunity to review each and every number that's on the forms. It's very difficult for us volunteers to do that. We want to be fair to the parishes and be able to get back to the parishes with issues that are brought up when we find them. And if we don't have that information in time, then stand by here.
Yeah, so here's where we're talking about the late form submission. Anything received after May 15th, and this is after the magic call by your regional, don't wait for that call. But May 15th, that form's not submitted, you usually get the call by that committee member. That's too late. And we will be encouraged by other metropolises to add a 5% on the parish allocation amount. So don't, please, guys, I know we're volunteers. If you've got a special circumstance that's not allowing you to get that in on time, you know, Steve should know about that. Father George Callis, our chancellor, should know about that. Obviously, if it's blessed by the hierarchy, you're not going to have a 5% added to your parish allocation amount. But if we're not hearing from you, we're having difficulty reaching out to you, unfortunately, you're going to see 5%. You're going to put your parish in a situation where nobody wants to add 5% to that number. Incomplete forms. If the year's missing, we're encouraged to assess a 10% penalty. Nobody wants to assess penalties. This is not the IRS. But failure to submit forms in the last 2 years, it hurts the metropolis, it hurts your parish, and it hurts other parishes, because if you're not paying, if your parish isn't submitting, then guess what? The other 49 parishes in the metropolis then are paying.
And these 10% penalties is not being assessed by the Metropolis Finance Committee. It's being assessed by the Archdiocese.
And it's assessed on the metropolis, so the
Absolutely.
metropolis is going to in turn assess it on your parish. So don't put your parish in that situation. You guys, you were voted in by your parish councils to do an awesome job. and we respect that job. We respect your commitment to the volunteer job that you're doing. But please don't put your parish in a situation. If it's in the middle of tax time and you're an accountant and you're doing the May 15th extensions for your corporations and you know you're going to be a day or two late, let the metropolis know. Don't wait for that call from the parish committee member or the finance committee member saying, hey, where are your forms? Because it's already put you in a bad spot. Let's go to the previous slide. Okay, I'm surprised that hasn't brought any questions or comments, but we can appreciate that.
Well, the number one here is common errors. All financials are not included.
We've talked about that.
We talked about that. We've hit on that several times. That's an incomplete submission. Deductions taken that are not included in the total expenses. We've talked about that. If it's not in your total expenses, you cannot deduct it.
And again, when we're reviewing these as a finance committee, I just want to stress that we're looking for ways to help your parish out, to help the metropolis out in the long run by giving us as many allowable deductions as possible. But the deductions taken, if they're not included in total expenses, we can't allow them.
Well, I know you have found deductions and added it to the form for the parish. It's hard for us to communicate that with the parish because we're dealing with so many parishes, but we do it anyway to help the parish. And I know I have also. And that's one thing we want to do, is we want to find additional deductions if possible. Again, they have to be legitimate and they have to be verifiable.
And finally, number 4, they have to match the financial statements of the parish. And that includes all financial statements, trusts, foundations, as well as the parish overall expenditures.
That's absolutely correct.
So let's go, yeah. So that's it for the form. And again, at this point, we can entertain questions about some of the deductions that we haven't covered yet. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and talk about the process from March 15th. We mailed those out. May 15th is our deadline. What happens next, Steve?
Well, hopefully we'll be receiving all the forms by May 15th. We'll review them. We'll try and communicate with you as much as possible. I personally, when I receive the forms, if I receive it by email, I send back a little note saying, thank you for your submission. I've received it. We don't review them as they come in. We try to do that all at one time. And it's hard to communicate if there are any corrections. When there's any omissions or we don't understand the number, then we'll communicate with you.
I want to take this opportunity because this happens May 15th, that on the bottom of the allocation form, one thing that we failed to stress is that the complete package should be emailed to you by May 15th or faxed to you at the number provided on the bottom of the form, and the complete package should be mailed so that the metropolis has a hard copy of your submission.
That's very important that the metropolis has the hard copy.
Because we take those copies and we copy them so that when we have the review by the Archdiocese, we have the submissions for every metropolis handy for the other metropolis to sit there and review. Okay, questions, comments? You can go ahead and unmute yourselves now if you'd like.
So the May 15th deadline, if we email it.
Wait, before you ask your question, we're going to ask that you identify yourself and tell us what parish you're from so that we get to know you.
Yeah, this is Steve Alex at Patriots Rocky River. So when we email it to Steve, that's considered timely, and the hard copies be in the mail at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, if we get your hard copy in the mail 2 days later, you're not going to see a penalty, guys. Come on, that's reasonable cause. I mean,
you've sent it to us on May 15th. You have date stamp. No problem, no issue.
Okay, good.
Again,
not like you wait the last minute.
Good question, Steve. Very good. Anybody else, please open up your mics now. This is the time to go ahead and let's, if you have any comments or questions, we'd love to entertain it. And of course, you know, we want these questions because we want to be able to get them out to you and have this information for future use so that we can anticipate the questions as we're giving you this presentation.
And if you want to ask a question by email, you have my email address. It's on the form. By all means, send me an email. I'll be glad to answer whatever I can.
Ask your local rep.
Yeah.
And you also have your local reps for the
Can you tell us who they are?
Northwest. Northwest is Steve Poulos, Elizabeth Bartz, and Nick Paputzis. And for the Central is Philip Yamalas and Pete Manitis. For the Southwest is Peter Alex and myself. And for the East is George Muklas.
And again, if you can't get your rep, contact a rep from another region. We don't care. We'd like a little bit of assistance in getting everyone identified that was on this call so that we can help you. Somebody called in from a 3-4 area code at the, can you identify yourself? Whoever called in on the phone, there's one person that's called in with the 304 area code. We believe that's West Virginia. Could you kindly identify yourself? Okay. And while we're waiting for you to unmute yourself, to identify yourself, Nick, can you identify yourself by name? Again, we're going to go through and ask you to identify yourself by name and parish. Okay, Nick, wait for you. How about HC Treasurer? Is that Holy Cross Pittsburgh? Let's hit unmute on our button so we can unmute everybody. Right there where it says, under more, over there, more. Yeah, there we go. All right, Nick.
Campitas, Holy Cross Treasurer.
And who is that, Holy Cross Treasurer?
Jimmy Campitas.
Hey, Jimmy, good, thank you. That was nice. I like your identification.
Thank you
Okay.
for having us here, Phil. This was helpful.
Very good, Nick. And again, you're from my home parish. I'll be glad to sit down with you at your convenience, and we'll do that for any parish in the Central and work with you at any time. So thank you, Nick. Jimmy. Nick, can you identify yourself and what parish you're from?
Yeah, I'm Nick Ligarakis from St. George in Newcastle.
Great, Nick. Glad to have you on the call. And there's a Pete Manitis. You've already identified yourself, Pete.
We know Pete.
Our finance committee member here. Above Pete, we have Beverly Smith. Beverly, have we been able to get you unmuted? We're going to try to unmute you. Does anybody know what parish Beverly is from? She identified that in the chat earlier, Father George. Beverly, if you could send us a chat if you hear us and let us know what parish you're representing, we certainly would appreciate that. Okay, Beverly? And then there's John Marotis. You've already identified yourself at the beginning of the call.
St. Mary's.
From St. Mary's.
Johnstown.
And let's see, this is a stranger to the committee, Elizabeth Bartz. Do you know her?
Elizabeth Bartz.
Elizabeth Bartz? Elizabeth Bartz. Where do I know
Lovely
that name?
lady.
Where do we know that name from? We have to tease you a little bit, but Elizabeth, of course, is an active member of the Finance Committee, and she is our Western rep. Elizabeth, good to have you here this evening.
Beverly Smith from Annunciation Church in Scranton, PA.
Very good.
Oh, nice to have you with us.
Nice having you here. Our love to Father Theodore. And there's
It's in Scranton.
My bad. I'm sorry.
For the fact.
There's somebody here with Big Yenya here, Father George Libanos. Very nice. I like the profile picture.
Steve Alex is from Rocky River.
Steve Alex, Rocky River. We have Holy Cross Treasurer. And then finally, we're under Father George Callis. So, folks, if there's no other questions or comments, we're going to wrap things up here. Before we do that, Father, if you can lead us in a closing prayer.
Or comments first.
And again, if there's no other comments, we thank you for your time this evening. By all means, if you have questions, please submit them to us. And we will submit answers to those questions on the Metropolis website under Finance Committee.
This was very exciting. We hope to do more of this in the future to be able to make things as easy as possible to communicate the message of our Metropolis Finance Ministry. Remember, we said ministry, not committee. There's a reason to that. Everything that we do in the church is a ministry. So please, when you take care of the financial needs of the community, work together with your parish council and remind everyone that, like the apostles, every act in the church is a sacred one, should be treated with honor and dignity and respect, So we want to take this time to thank you on behalf of His Eminence, our Chancellor, and this committee. We appreciate the amount of time you gave us, and we look forward to more of these in the future. We're going to be placing this on our Metropolis website or Metropolis YouTube page in the coming days. We'll send an email out to everyone. Let us take this time to pray. We thank you, Lord, for the close of this evening and this fellowship through the means of the blessings that you have given us. Again, we remember that all things, profit, salvation, are given to us by you. We ask you to grant us the preparation to enjoy the upcoming Holy Week and to be prepared to receive the resurrected light in our lives. Through the intercessions of the Holy Mother of God and of all your saints. Amen.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.